Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's doing great. This the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service now presents a reading of articles and features from the New York Times for Saturday, February 21st of 26. Um, your reader is Joe Gibbs. Hope everyone is doing good. I was out last week. My little sound production girl, my daughter, happened to be out of town. Must be nice to go to Texas where it's in the 80s. And you're not dealing with all this cold, right? So, what do we have going on today? Let's see. Top trending headlines online. Moms turn against Trump. Women feel like they were lied to. President Trump issued an executive order on Wednesday aimed at spurring the production of glyphosate, a weed killer that figured in thousands of lawsuits. The move has infuriated supporters of Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr.'s Make America Healthy Again movement. Cheryl Gay Stolberg and Hiroko Tabuchi reported. Next is Labor Secretary's husband barred from the department after sexual assault reports. Dr. Sean DeReamer, the husband of Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeReamer, has been barred from the department's headquarters for at least two female staff members said he touched them inappropriately in the office. The allegations arose as part of a widening misconduct scandal at the agency involving several members of Ms. Chavez DeReamer's inner circle. Great. Next, on the trending headlines. Eric Dane, McSteamy on Grey's Anatomy, dies at 53. Eric Dane, the actor best known for his breakout role as the handsome doctor nicknamed McSteamy on Grey's Anatomy, died 10 months after announcing he had been diagnosed with the neurological disorder ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. In the final one, I had no idea how to handle that. The drama behind a tense ice skating moment. An unusual delay before a medal ceremony at the 1994 Winter Games in Lillehammer, Norway, led to a tense moment for Olympic figure skaters Oksana Bayou, Nancy Kerrigan, and Lu Chen. For the New York Times Magazine, Charlie Locke asked the three athletes about what they were thinking on the ice at that moment. And here's a headline from history. A scoreless game at Chicago, February 21st, 1944. What happened on that day? A record crowd of 18,534 National Hockey League fans witnessed a scoreless tie at Chicago Stadium the previous day. According to Associated Press article that appeared in the Times, the Toronto and Chicago teams battled for 1 hour and 55 minutes to a historic conclusion with no goals or no penalties. The regular season game featuring the goalies Mike Caracas of Chicago and Paul Bibult of Toronto was the first and remains the only NHL game of its kind. In that era of sport, the league comprised only 6 teams, known as the Original Six. Both Chicago and Toronto finished the season in the top 4, earning spots in the Stanley Cup playoffs that April. The Montreal Canadiens swept Chicago in 1944 Stanley Cup Finals, winning the 4th game 5-4 in overtime. Nowadays, there is no such thing as ties in anything. Everyone tries to figure out a way to have overtime, penalty kicks, penalty shots. There's very few ties in any sports at this point, right? Okay. So we have some facts of interest. For his new film, Epic Elvis Presley in Concert, the director Baz Luhrmann used footage of the musician that he found in Warner Brothers vaults, buried in underground salt mines in Kansas. And we will be reading an article about this later in this broadcast. It's very interesting how they handled all this and how they made this concert movie for Elvis. Next fact of interest is North Korea has expanded its nuclear arsenal to 60 or more warheads by U.S. intelligence estimates and is working to demonstrate they can reach the United States. That's lovely. Alyssa Liu, who became the first U.S. woman to win an Olympic gold medal in singles figure skating since 2002, wears her hair with horizontal stripes that she compares to rings on a tree to mark the passage of time. Her hair does look totally different. It had to take some time to get it that way. And good for her for winning the gold medal. Next fact is Uber offers its drivers a $4,000 grant they can use to buy electric vehicles. Drivers must log at least 100 trips to qualify. Another fact, the U.S. Department said that U.S. attorneys prosecuted 1,782 human trafficking cases in 2023, an increase of 73% from 2013. 1,782 human trafficking cases. Where are we taking these people, and why are we taking them there? Don't we have enough problems with the people we deal with on a normal basis that you want to take other people somewhere from A to B for no reason? The Neo Victoria, which departed Seville, Spain in 1519, was the first ship to circumnavigate the globe. Wow, the Neo Victoria was the first ship to circle the globe. That's interesting. And the final one, in Italy, a lower proportion of women work than in most European countries, and they earn nearly 40% less on average than men. Now, there's a section here called Might We Suggest? 4 weekend recommendations from around the newsroom. Let's take a look and see what they want. This is a weird title. Body slamming on the first date. A wave of creative singles mixers is helping combat dating app fatigue in some cases with literal combat. A recent wrestling speed dating event in Brooklyn encouraged young romantics to forge a connection off screen and on the mat. But if tackling someone to the ground isn't your preferred method of flirting, other more peaceful mixers abound, like board games. Anyone? This is from NewYorkTimes.com style. I'm not sure that's a great idea. Hosting a dumpling party. This sounds better. Anything with food sounds better. I'm not really sure slamming the girl you want to meet in the first 5 minutes is going to be successful. It's simply a culinary truth. Dumplings taste better when made with friends. And with New York Times Cooking's second annual Dumpling Week underway, you've got plenty of savory bites to test out. Gather your assembly line, start filling, folding, pleating, and pinching at NewYorkTCooking.com. And there is a little illustration of some dumplings in a container. Looks like a lot of fun. And how about getting lost in an urban fantasy, number 3? For all the thrills of being transported to an entirely new universe, there's something equally enchanting about the idea of discovering magic in our own world. That's the premise for urban fantasy novels like Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas, Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, which spin spectacular tales in a familiar setting. Explore more recommendations in genre from the best-selling author Marie Lu at NewYorkTimes.com-books. And the number 4 recommendation, revisiting a swashbuckling classic. Okay? If urban fantasy feels too grounded in reality, perhaps you would prefer an adventure in which almost every actor, Tim Curry notwithstanding, is a Muppet. Muppet Treasure Island, which celebrated its 30th anniversary this month, arrived on the heels of Muppet Christmas Carol in 1992 and sent Kermit and the gang a sea alongside the duplicitous pirate Long John Silver. Curry looks back fondly on the film he made with his felted co-stars. He recently told the Culture Desk, "I hope it plays forever. Read more about the production and Silver Scandal's affair at Miss Piggy at NewYorkTimes.com-movies. Hi-ho. And what else do we have here? Second look. Purple and gold, not so green. Okay, let's see what this is about here. Looks like it's about New Orleans. The good times certainly rolled in New Orleans, where weeks of Mardi Gras celebrations came at the expense of trash-covered streets and bead-strewn trees. In a city already vulnerable to climate change, a group of scientists, local officials, and nonprofit organizations are working to make the festivities less wasteful. Think plant-based glitter and beads embedded with okra seeds to help them break down beneath the ground. but making a real sustainable shift for good might just come down to revelers themselves. Yeah, I don't see any of that ever changing. And here's an article I didn't think I'd be reading. How to hand wash dishes better. What's dishes? My wife would probably want to know why I'm reading an article about doing the dishes. We can hand wash dishes. Well, anyway, here's what it says. For many people, washing dishes by hand is a necessity. A few tools and techniques can help make the task easier and more efficient, says Anna Perling. Choose the right sponge. A good all-around kitchen sponge like the Skuro-style scrubby sponge can take many dishwashing tasks, even heavy-duty ones, especially with enough soaking. I'm great at that. I soak them. They're soaking. That's what I tell everybody. They're soaking. I'll get to them. They're soaking. You got to let them soak. To scrub away stains that have baked onto pots and pans over the years, try the Scotch-Brite heavy-duty scrub sponge with baking soda. Some situations require specialized tools. If you need a specialized tool to wash it, I'm thinking stepping on the bottom of the garbage can and dropping it and letting the top go down is probably the best selection. Use a bottle brush set to get through narrow bottle openings or to reach the bottoms of tall glasses. This says scrape off food. To expedite things and keep your dishwater clean, start by scraping food bits off your dishes. Even if you want to leave them till tomorrow, awesome idea. It's a good idea to scrape and rinse them first because dried food will be harder to get off later. You can also soak pans with baked on food in hot water and soak to loosen debris. Again, soaking is awesome. If you have sensitive skin, you may want to use gloves. Basic dish gloves are your best bet. Bulkier ones can hinder dexterity. And here's another thing. Save on soap and water. I do. Let them soak. It's most efficient to wash your dishes en masse by filling a tub or sink with soapy water. For starters, consider a pump dispenser, which can put out more manageable dollop of soap than squirts from the bottle. To preserve the soapy water for as long as possible, clean the least dirty dishes first. Once your water starts turning brown or losing suds, drain it and replace it. If you don't have a tub or a double sink, you can dilute a small amount of soap in a container. Then dip your sponge into the suds as you wash. It's possible to get through an entire load of dishes with only 1 or 2 changes of diluted soap. Dry efficiently. A good dish rack is designed to maximize space. Take advantage of it by placing your dishes, silverware, and glasses in the proper spots to dry. If you don't have this counter space for a full dish rack that are compact, fold away, or over the sink options, it's a good idea to use a towel to dry some of your pieces, like sharp knives or fragile glassware, and put them away immediately. You may want to take extra care when hand drying flatware or nice glassware, and then buff them with a soft, lint-free cloth to remove any water spots. There is also something called solo cups and paper dishes. Just a thought. It's just a thought. Doesn't mean it's right. All right, so back to that story that was in one of those little feature spots, Elvis. And right now I am looking at an illustration of the King. This says, a scene from Epic, Elvis Presley in concert. A documentary pieced together by director Baz Luhrmann from footage shot for 2 1970 concert films and other sources. And it's Elvis holding his guitar. It looks like he's trying to tune it. He's got like 4 different people near him. I don't know if they're from his band or, just entourage or people backstage. A cool little picture, black and white. This says, the title says, Getting Close to the King, a gift for Elvis Presley fans. Director Baz Luhrmann weaves newly found footage into an intimate concert film. The article. Concert films can serve many purposes, extending a brand, surfacing footage of a historical moment, pulling cash from fans' pockets, but at their best, they make you feel as if you're a concert. Epic Elvis Presley in concert in theaters has a gimmickly title, but thankfully its director Baz Luhrmann did not make a gimmicky concert film. This is a fun movie and a revealing one too. 4 years ago, Luhrmann released Elvis, the Spangly biopic starring Austin Butler. In the process of making that film, the director learned about some footage shot for two 1970 concert films. Eventually, he located the negatives in a place that sounds like a joke but isn't. Warner Brothers vaults buried in underground salt mines in Kansas. That's insane, right? These recordings, as well as some little scene footage from the Graceland archives, were restored for Epic, which functions briefly as an autobiographical film narrated by Elvis. That's really cool. I can't wait to see it. And I did see the movie that they made about Elvis, and that was an awesome movie with an awesome soundtrack. If you love Elvis, you'll definitely like that. And I look forward to this concert movie. I think everyone would definitely enjoy it if you're into his music, of course. This says in excerpts from interviews, he tells you about his time in the military and in Hollywood before pivoting into full-scale concert. That's cool. At the start, we hear him say, "Some people wonder why I can't stand still while I'm singing. I've tried it, and I can't do it." That's a good description of Luhrmann's filmmaking, too, which zings and pings and never stops moving, making director and subject a great match. As Elvis sings, we see performances from several concerts, sometimes from different eras, seamlessly stitched together so we're not just enjoying the music, but also getting a kind of panoramic view of his career. Occasionally, a snippet of biographical detail surfaces, always with a clip from an interview or sometimes a darker hint. A montage of Colonel Tom Parker, his controlling manager, plays while Elvis sings "You're the Devil in Disguise." There are plenty of familiar tunes and some playful bits, too. At one point, he rolls back and forth between Little Sister and the Beatles' Get Back, to the delight of the audience. But the most fun part of Epic is getting close to the man himself, who is mostly jocular and wholly invested in the music. Though he begins to show signs of wearing in footage that seems drawn from his later years, the movie doesn't focus on his drug-addicted demise. Is that instead we see him playing to a crowd, joking with his backup singers, and losing himself in songs he sung thousands of times before. We get close to his face as he grins and winks a view you'd never get from a seat at the show. You get a sense of his personality in a way that feels intimate and uncommon. Of course, there's plenty about Elvis Presley's life that's left out of Epic, because as with a concert, this isn't supposed to be a warts and all look at the star. What you come for is a good time and an entertainer at his best, full of energy, charisma, and raw appeal. It's a fan's dream, to be sure. But in getting so close to a man who has often been turned into a caricature, Epic goes beyond just a concert. We enjoy both the performance and the man who loved nothing more than to perform. So that's a cool little article about Elvis. And I do look forward to checking that out. It should be good. All right. What else do we have here in the New York Times? Looks like this is from NASA. Rehearsal for Countdown appears nearly flawless. And at the bottom of this little article, crowds lined up in January to view the first countdown rehearsal for Artemis II at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So, article by Kenny Chang. Practice makes better, although not perfect. On Thursday night, NASA successfully completed a countdown rehearsal for Artemis II moon mission, experiencing only a few small glitches along the way. That was a marked improvement from the agency's first try a couple weeks ago, which was cut short because of leaks by hydrogen, the fuel used by the rocket. Proud of at NASA team as this was a big step towards America's return to lunar environment, says Jarek Isaacman, the NASA administrator, wrote an X on Friday morning. We are going. Unless a review of data reveals a subtle showstopper, the almost flawless rehearsal should pave the way for a launch attempt for Artemis 2 in a couple of weeks. We don't have any indications of anything that we're worried about, John Honeycutt, the chairman of mission management teams for Artemis 2, said during a news conference Friday morning, but we're just getting started. Lori Glaze, the acting associate administrator for NASA's Exploration Systems Development Mission Directorate, said that the agency was aiming to hold a rigorous review of the data next week to determine if the mission was ready to fly. If the mission passes muster, NASA officials can then announce a launch date. The agency is currently targeting March 6th. Ms. Glaze said, "For right now, that's the direction that we're headed," she said. There are additional launch opportunities like March 7th, 8th, 9th, and 11th. If Artemis 2 misses those, it will have to wait for next set of possible launch dates in April. The crew of 4, 3 NASA astronauts and 1 from Canada Space Agency, will enter quarantine on Thursday, a precaution to ensure that they remain healthy. The excitement for Artemis 2 is really starting to build, she said. That launch will send the astronauts on a 10-day journey that will swing around the moon and return to the Earth. The astronauts will not land on the moon, but they will be the first to leave low Earth orbit since the end of NASA's Apollo program more than 50 years ago. Why are we waiting so long? The 2-day countdown test at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, including filling up the tanks of the giant Space Launch System rocket with millions of pounds of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. The SLS design is in large part a remix of decades-old technologies from NASA space shuttles. The rocket on the launch pad includes leftover engines and other parts from the retired shuttles. Oh. Like the shuttles, SLS has been bedeviled by hydrogen leaks at the launch pad. You better get that fixed, because hydrogen is the lightest element. It is efficient, providing the most energy per pound of any fuel, but hydrogen molecules, which consist of pairs of hydrogen atoms, are also small and notoriously difficult to contain, so you definitely can have leaks with the hydrogen because of how small the particles are. During the first attempt, sizable hydrogen leaks occurred at the interface between the rocket and the launch pad. The tanks were eventually filled, but hours behind schedule. But in the final part of the countdown, the hydrogen leak reappeared, and the rehearsal was ended with about 5 minutes left in the countdown. So the technicians have since replaced the seals at the junction. On Thursday, the hydrogen remained well behaved throughout the countdown, with concentration near the connection at 1.6% or less, far below the 16% limit. Really no leakage to speak of, said Charlie Blackwell Thompson, the launch director. Minor issues included a problem with ground communications in Launch Control Center and a voltage anomaly in the measurement of battery that briefly paused the countdown with 90 seconds left. The countdown is resumed and ticked down to 33 seconds and then stopped as planned. The countdown clock was then reset to 10 minutes as systems were reconnected. That allowed NASA to practice how to reset launch attempt to fix a last-minute problem instead of scrubbing the attempt. The reset, which included replenishing hydrogen and oxygen in the rocket's propellant tanks, was expected to take about an hour. We did it in 57 minutes, Ms. Blackwell Thompson said. The countdown then resumed again, ending as planned, this time with 29 seconds left. It was a busy night in Florida as the Artemis 2 rocket sat on the pad. Space 9 Falcon 9 rocket launched from a nearby launch pad at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, carrying a load of Starlink satellites to orbit. So we will see in early March if this thing takes off or not. Hopefully everything goes good and they stop all the leaks and get this going. So here is another article, something totally different. It says, price gouging is real. Doing nothing is not the answer. And there's a cartoon figure of a guy drinking a tiny, tiny little cup of coffee and a tiny little snack. Because now, as you know, things are more expensive. The products are more expensive, and they're making them smaller. You're getting way less for more money. So this is from Tim Wu, a contributing opinion writer and law professor at Columbia University. Again, it says price gouging is real and doing nothing is not the answer. Many Americans became aware of the problem of price gouging in 2016 when the cost of a 2-pack of EpiPens, which in 2007 was about $100, went over $600. This is astronomical increase did not reflect product innovation or new production cost. The EpiPen, a portable injector used to treat severe allergic reactions, is fairly cheap to manufacture. Rather, the sky-high price seemed to reflect the fact that the EpiPen is a necessary and often life-saving piece of equipment. And that in the absence of meaningful alternatives, people will pay pretty much whatever they have to. So yes, they are definitely gouging poor people who need the EpiPen. Since 2016, price gouging has become an even more pressuring issue. Businesses across industries are increasing profits by exploiting and with what economics is called situational market power, the ability to raise prices when there's limited choice or urgent need. Think of the convenience store that doubles the price of a bottle of water after a natural disaster. The fact that companies now have access to and can analyze so much personalized data is improving their extraction capabilities. If a grocery store delivery app can tell that you must have Skippy peanut butter, why not raise the price just for you? Companies increasingly know exactly when they have pricing power and how to exploit it. There are two main challenges to combating price gouging. One, right, is the most of our laws, federal, state, and municipal, do not provide leaders sufficiently broad authority to counter the problem. Mayor Zoran Mandami of New York, who was promised to make living in New York City more affordable, is fortunate. New York City is among the rare places where the law robustly authorizes the policing of unconscionable trade practices. That includes price gouging, defined as gross disparity between the value received by the consumer and the price paid to the consumer's detriment. Until legislators nationwide pass similarly aggressive laws, New York City under Mr. Mandani has the best chance to offer a model for how to tackle the problem. But before that can happen, we will have to overcome the second major challenge of thwarting price gouging. How to enforce the law without employing the crude price controls that reportedly have proved economically unwise. To fight rising prices in the 1970s, the Nixon administration experimented with a price commission that, while popular at first, ultimately failed. Its price controls not only didn't address the underlying causes of high prices, they also disrupted supply chains and caused inflation to spike further after the controls were lifted. The false lesson too many people took from the failure was that there is nothing policymakers can do when companies shamelessly use their market power to boost prices. But there is a middle path between sweeping price controls and laissez-faire shrug. The trick is to focus not on prices everywhere, but on prices when and where competition is absent and abuse is most predictable. A classic case is when consumers are physically isolated, such as at an airport, sports stadium, or solitary gas station in a remote part of the country. All of a sudden, people are paying $8 for a bottle of water at Kennedy Airport that costs $3 in a Manhattan bodega. Another case is when the government has provided a seller with exclusivity as with hotels and concessions in national parks. In these cases, the government does not need to invent a fair price and hold sellers to it. It can rely on benchmark price or what the same good or service costs nearby in a more competitive market. This approach, sometimes called street pricing, treats large deviations from prevailing market prices as presumptively unconscionable when they occur in a captive setting. So there's no doubt that you shouldn't have to pay $7, $8 for a bottle of water at the airport, or $10 for one pop, or $20 for one beer at a sporting event, when a mile down the road you can get a 12-pack for the same price. This shouldn't be allowed. This idea has been tested. A few airports already have strong anti-price gouging policies. The best versions are in Salt Lake City and in Portland. Skeptics may worry that sellers will be able to evade enforcement, perhaps by keeping product prices reasonable, but increasing related costs such as shipping or service fees, or by rebranding products to avoid comparison with street prices. That risk is real, but evasion is not an argument against law enforcement. The goal of any law is deterrence, and that happens by targeting the most clear-cut cases first. There is also a concern that price enforcement would disproportionately affect small businesses since they typically have higher costs. Yeah, you can have higher costs as a small business when you're trying to get more for each item, but double, triple is wrong, right? This is why any anti-price gouging policy must give sellers a chance to demonstrate that they have higher labor, security, or delivery costs. The intended target is not the corner bodega that can't match Costco's egg prices, but where customers pay a premium for convenience. It's the business that usually extracts revenue from customers who have no other meaningful choice. Note, too, that we're not talking about preventing people from buying luxury goods, which are overpaid almost by definition. Selling a designer handbag at $3,000 that costs $200 produces about serving or perhaps creating expensive tastes. Right, if they want to do it, let them. The enforcement priority should be the price essentials like milk, medicines, and water. Robust anti-gougers laws would primarily help consumers. The economic policy, think Groundwork Collaborative, recently estimated that corporate profits heavily based on aggressive pricing strategies drove more than half of inflation during the second and third quarters of 23. But when effectively enforced, the laws would also encourage companies to focus on improving and creating new products, real innovation, rather than on refining and perfecting the revenue extraction strategies that economics call exploitative innovation. Everyone should accept that markets sometimes fail in predictable ways, that sellers will take advantage when customers are captive, and that the government can and should correct such failures. Competition is good. When markets work, they are the best form of it, but when they fail, we shouldn't pretend otherwise. Exactly. They definitely should do something about those examples. I'm going to an arena tonight to watch a show, and everything I buy will be astronomically much more expensive than if I go to Tops or Wegmans or anywhere. Even though their prices are high, it won't cost me $10 for one drink. They definitely need to find a way to combat these type of situations. All right, so with the Olympics going on, here's an interesting article. This says, gold medal moment underscores struggle for Italian mothers. And there is a huge illustration of a mom, athlete from Italy, holding her son in the Italia beautiful blue fleece she has on. She has the Italia headband like around her head and her hair sticking out. A very nice picture. Francesca Lollobrigida won 2 gold medals and set an Olympic record in Milan. She celebrated with her 2-year-old son, Tommaso, and that's what that picture is. And here's the article. Again says, excuse me, gold medal moment _ struggle for Italian mothers. There is one more little illustration there. Miss Lollobrigida training with her teammates. She often practices with men but highlights her femininity with pink stripes. So she's a speed skater, and it shows her working out what looks like the men's team. The Italian speed skater Francesca Lollobrigida had just won a gold medal and set an Olympic record on her 35th birthday, no less, but her toddler son Tommaso stole the limelight. Mrs. Lollobrigida, holding her 2-year-old son in her arms with her gold medal around her neck, answered questions that reporters, while Tommaso, bleeding mama, grabbed her nose, batted a broadcaster's microphone, and ripped a Team Italy headband off her head. That sounds accurate. Wait 1 second, love, Miss Lollobrigida said, never breaking her composure. The reaction to Miss Lollobrigida breakout moment revealed the complicated landscape for Italian women who want to balance their professional and family lives. While medal-winning Italian men who celebrated with their children attracted little attention, Mrs. Lollobrigida's multitasking went viral. Several Italian newspapers ran front-page photos of her holding Tommaso, like the one we're looking at, under headlines playing on the words Mama, Giorgia Meloni, Italy's first female prime minister and also mother, joined a largely supportive chorus by praising Miss Lollobrigida's Italian pride, talent, and determination. Amid the support, there was still plenty of criticism, scoffing at Tommaso's naughty behavior that threw shade at Miss Lollobrigida's parenting skills. Excuse me, jibes at her husband for not taking control and removing his son from the scene. Boy, everyone has a lot to say, don't they? Even the positive reaction expressed an explicit surprise at a female champion who is also a successful parent. In Italy, we still have the meaning that the man needs to work and the woman needs to stay home, you know, Miss Lollobrigida said in an interview with the New York Times. She said multitasking with her child might have felt familiar to working mothers anywhere. The reaction to it was one of several moments in the games that showed the challenges still faced, in particular by Italy's sportswomen who have achieved growing success and publicity at these Olympics while never shaking the chauvinism of their society. After the Italian skier Federica Bergoni won the first of the 2 gold medals in Cortina earlier this month, her father, Daniele Bergoni, told a reporter he hoped she would quit skiing and stay home and give me 2 beautiful grandchildren. A piece in Sol 24, Ori, Italy's main business newspaper, described the women of Italy's Olympic delegation, many of them in their mid-30s, as irresistible girls who won while the biological clock gets faster than they do. All right, then. Unlike Miss Lollobrigida, most Italian female athletes retire before having children, said the Francesca Vitali, an assistant professor in sports sciences at the University of Verona. The perception is if you are an athlete, probably you are not so good of a mother, Ms. Vitali said. In Italy, a lower proportion of women work than in most other European countries and earn nearly 40% less on average than men. Meanwhile, the birth rate has fallen to one of the lowest in Europe, in part, experts say, because of the lack of support for working mothers. While Italy has traditionally been a family-focused culture, Some of the backlash against Miss Lolo Brigita's son during her gold medal interview may reflect a declining tolerance for children in public places, said Letitia Mansorini, a demographer at Bocconi University in Milan. As births have declined, we are not used to seeing children anymore, Mrs. Mencarsini said. Miss Lolo Gabrita said in an interview with the Times that she hoped to challenge some of these trends. I want to show that it is possible to combine professional achievement with motherhood, she said this week, following practice in Milan 4 days after she had won her second gold medal. Mrs. Lolo Brigida came to the sport early. The eldest of two daughters, she grew up outside Rome with her father, Maurizio, a one-time roller skating champion and swim coach. You don't usually hear that as a combination, right? And mother, Sandra Bergamini, a physical education teacher. By the time she was 14 months old, Mrs. Lola Brigida was on roller skates. By the time she was 3, she was on inline skates. As a teenager, she won national and then international championships. So she was definitely made for skating and competing. I've known many boys and girls who were even better, maybe, than Francisca, but didn't have the patience and the perseverance to keep at it, said her father, Mr. Lolo Brigida, 64. She sacrificed school trips and parties to train, often driving hours on a Friday night to get to an ice rink in the north of Italy. When classmates teased her about her legs being too big and powerful for a girl, she persisted. During the 2006 Winter Olympics in Turin, Miss Lolo Brigida began to harbor her own Olympic ambitions. She reached out to Maurizio Marchetto, Italy's national speed skating coach, and asked if he would help her transition from wheels to blades. She often practiced with men, but highlighted her femininity with pink stripes on the skates or manicures in bright colors. She won her first 2 gold medals in Milan, sporting bold green nails. At the Winter Games in Sochi in 2014, she placed 23rd in the 3,000 meters. 8 years later, at the Beijing Games, she finally won an Olympic bronze and silver medals. After Beijing, she told her coach that she and her husband, Matteo Angoletti, who she met on the inline skating circuit, wanted to start a family. She figured that if she gave birth within a year, she could take and leave and retrain in time to compete in the next Winter Olympics in her home country. She was good at choosing her timing, said Mr. Marchetto, her coach. As soon as she told her parents she was pregnant, her father said and scoured the internet for studies on women who had returned to elite sports after childbirth. Miss Lola Brigida modified her workout during her pregnancy. When Tommaso was 4 months old, she returned to full-time training. She wanted to continue to breastfeed, so Italy's Ice Sports Federation paid for her mother and sister to join her to care for her baby while she was away from home outside of Rome. Because Italy does not have a permanent indoor skating oval, the athletes travel as much as 250 days a year to train and compete in other countries. We sports people have to be an example, said Andrea Gios, president of the federation. He said he hoped the success of athletes like Miss Lola Brigida would spread in our country a different culture of support for working parents. Once he began walking, Tommaso was enrolled in a nursery school near Rome, and Mr. Angoletti, 38, an engineer, now swaps daycare drop-off and pickup duties with his mother-in-law. Mr. Angoletti is not fazed. I know what I was getting myself into, he said during an online interview with Tommaso playing with a toy helicopter. The couple had Tommaso on skates before his first birthday. Lately, though, he says no because he associates the skates with when I'm away, Mrs. Logabrita said. After the Winter Games are over, she is done with Olympic competition. She and Mr. Angoletti want to try for a second baby, but she plans to stay involved in the sport in some capacity. Mother, she said, needs some space for themselves. Working can help them recharge, she said, and give them 100% to being a mom. So that's a very good story, and it just shows you how different cultures are and how they look at things still differently in other countries and cultures. And this is really a nice picture of her holding her son, and she won gold medals. So she has more than proved that you can do everything you want to do. Here is a story. Now, we covered this story on a different week, maybe the first or second week. And it was a story about the nurses in New York City that were striking and the lack of help in these hospitals for these patients. So there is a couple illustrations here. The one shows a balloon, says day 39. Nurses in Washington Heights begin their strike on January 12th. As the strike continued, many were stretched financially. There's another illustration. It says you see all these women yelling, cheering, fist pumping, holding signs. About 4,000 nurses at the New York Presbyterian Columbia held out for a better deal. This has been a long, hard fight, a nurse said. So the title here says, last group of striking New York City nurses reaches a tentative agreement. A vote on ratifying the deal is expected in coming days. After a strike that lasted nearly 6 weeks without money, the union representing nurses at the New York Presbyterian Columbian Hospital said early Friday that it had reached a tentative agreement with the hospital, one of New York City's largest medical centers. See what this says here. Should rank and file members approve the deal, one of the largest and longest nurses' strikes in recent decades would end on January 12th. Nearly 15,000 nurses at 3 of the city's major health systems walked out, citing grievances that included staffing levels and exposed of workplace violence. Right. More than 10,000 nurses at 4 hospitals, Montefiore Medical Center, Mount Sinai Hospital, and 2 other hospitals in Mount Sinai system, reached deals with their employers last week and have returned to work. Wow, what a difference, right? But more than 4,000 nurses who work at New York Presbyterian Columbia held out. They rejected a deal similar to what Montefiore and Mount Sinai nurses had accepted, and they stayed on strike. A New York Presbyterian Columbian spokeswoman, Angela Caravazzi, confirmed on Friday that a tentative deal had been reached. We are pleased to have reached a tentative settlement with NYSNA through the mediator that reflects our tremendous respect for nurses, Ms. Caravazzi said in a statement early Friday, referring to the nurses' union, the New York State Nurses Association. By holding out an extra week, the New York Presbyterian nurses appear to have won slightly better terms. According to the union, the tentative deal would allow the union to put its staffing complaints in front of an arbitrator more quickly. That's good. That could mean better working conditions and staffing levels, according to the nurses. The union also said the tentative deal gives it more control over where in the hospital newly hired nurses are assigned, and that agreement contains slightly stronger layoff protections, according to the union. This has been a long, hard fight, but we are proud of what we achieved, said Beth Loudon, a nurse who led the union bargaining committee at New York Presbyterian Hospital. With the strength of our nurses and the support of our community and allies, we showed the hospital that nurses will not compromise on patient care. The nurses of the hospital are expected to vote on whether to ratify the deal over the weekend. Nurses who work in Mount Sinai Health System and at Montefiore had voted overwhelmingly last week in favor of the deal that it put forward by a mediator, according to the union. The length of the strike came as a surprise to many nurses on the picket line. When they last walked off the job in early 23, hospitals quickly agreed to their demands, which focused on staffing levels. That strike lasted 3 days, but the nurse had more leverage then, and the hospitals were caught unprepared with few executives suspecting a walkout. The latest strike also revealed divisions within the union. Last week, Ms. Loudon and other nurses saw disciplinary action against union leaders, claiming that they had tried to force an early deal on members. For a month and a half, through some of the hardest weather the city has been in in years, nurses at NYP showed the city that they won't make any compromises to patient care. Nancy Hagen, the union's president, said in a statement on Friday, referring to New York's Presbyterian nurses, they stood in the cold, snow, ice, wind, along with their union siblings, fighting back management's attempts to cut corners on care and secured contracts that improve enforceable safe staffing ratios, improve protections from workplace violence, and maintain health benefits with no additional out-of-pocket costs for frontline nurses, Ms. Hagen said. Nurses have long said that some hospital units in the city are chronically understaffed, leading to inferior care. The 2023 strike resulted in improved nurse-to-patient staffing ratios. So it's very good. That's an update on that story. I don't know if any of which of you heard that situation, but we did read a story about that when they were starting the strike. And it is good that they're coming up to some kind of good solution here, because that was definitely like 10,000 nurses off the job. And that's very difficult to run a hospital like that or to give them the right care. So we're getting down towards the end here, and we are on the weekend. So let's cook something. What do you want to cook? We have some spinach meatballs with pasta. Let's take a look and see what we need to do there. There is an illustration of, yep, you guessed it, spinach meatballs with pasta. Looks like a nice dish with some cheese sprinkled on it. Beautiful, nice Italian dish. Spinach meatballs with pasta. These meatballs are from Ali Slago, our genius. She adds a package of thawed frozen spinach to the beef and pork mixture, which is not only smart budget hack for stretching meat and upping your veg intake, but also adds moisture and accentuates the flavor of beef. All right, I've never thought about putting spinach in my meatballs, but you never know. What do you need? Well, I'm going to tell you. We need one 10-ounce package frozen chopped spinach, thawed, squeeze dried, liquid reserved. We need 3/4 cup of panko breadcrumbs, 1 large egg, 5 garlic cloves, finely chopped and divided, salt and black pepper, 8 ounces ground beef, 15 to 20% fat, 8 ounces of ground pork, half cup finely grated Parmesan, about 1.5 ounces, plus more for serving. Of course, you got to have more Parmesan cheese. Come on. 1/4 cup finely chopped parsley or basil, plus a few sprigs. 3 tablespoons extra virgin olive oil, plus more for rolling. 2 28 cans of crushed tomatoes, and 1 pound spaghetti, rigatoni, or another long or tubed noodle. And there is 6 pretty decent steps here. So what are we doing with all this to make that beautiful dish that I'm looking at? Number 1, in a large bowl, stir together the spinach, half cup of spinach liquid panko, egg, 1 teaspoon of chopped garlic, 1 teaspoon of Diamond Crystal kosher salt, or half teaspoon of coarse kosher salt, and a few grinds of pepper. Let sit for 5 minutes until the panko is softened. Number 2 is add that beef, pork, Parmesan, and parsley. Mix with your hands until combined. Avoid over-mixing. Using oiled hands, roll the mixture into 18 balls, about 2 heaping teaspoons, about 50 grams each, and place on a plate or sheet pan as you go. If the meal is soft and not holding a shape, refrigerate for 5 to 10 minutes so they can firm. 3, in a large Dutch oven or heavy bottom pot, heat the oil over medium. Working in batches to avoid crowding, add the meatballs and cook until brown on 2 sides, 3 to 6 minutes per side. Return the plate and repeat with the remaining meatballs. They will not be cooked through yet, though. Number 4, without cleaning the pot, reduce heat to medium-low and add the remaining garlic. Stir to coat in fat, and then carefully add the crushed tomatoes, the herb, sprigs, and a pinch of salt. Scrape up the stuck-on brown bits. Once gently simmering, add the meatballs and any drippings from the plate. Cook flipping the meatballs occasionally until the meatballs are cooked through and the sauce is rich, 20 to 25 minutes, and then turn off the heat. Number 5, while the meatballs are simmering, bring a large pot of salted water to boil. When the meatballs are done, add the pasta to the water and cook until al dente according to package directions. Reserve 1.5 cups of pasta water and then drain and return the pasta to the pot. And your 6th step, add about 1 cup of tomato sauce to the pasta along with a 1/2 cup of pasta water. Toss over medium-high until the pasta is glossed in sauce. Add more sauce and pasta water as needed until lightly coated. Serve the pasta topped with the meatballs, more sauce, and more grated Parmesan. Now, you have to have more grated Parmesan, people. You cannot go on an Italian dish and at the very end not add more Parmesan. You have to do it. It's just right. It makes everything delicioso, and everyone wants it to be perfect. So this is wrapping up our time here with the New York Times. I love reading this stuff for you guys. I hope you find the articles interesting. I look forward to coming back again next week and seeing what stories are happening. The Olympics will be over by then. If I'm not mistaken, the men's U.S. gold hockey game, I believe, is tomorrow. The women have already won the gold medal, which was very exciting in overtime. And the men are going for the gold against Canada. It's like a giant NHL all-star team, as all the players are from the NHL. It should be very exciting with closing ceremonies, I think, coming up maybe Sunday night, if I'm not mistaken. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Cook some good food. You've been listening to a reading of the New York Times for 27th of February, Saturday. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your reader has been Joe Gibbs, and I really appreciate all of your time and look forward to talking to you again next week. Thank you.